The year was 2157. Earth had established modest colonies on Mars and Europa, with humanity finally reaching beyond its cradle. Park Do-yun sat at his desk in the United Earth Coalition headquarters, eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the Alpha Centauri mission plans. As Secretary General of the UEC, he had pushed hard for this expansion. Humanity needed room to grow. "Another 5 years, and we'll have our first extrasolar colony," he murmured, swiping through the technical specifications. The transport ships were nearly complete. The colonists were in final training. After centuries of looking up at the stars, humans would finally live among them. The alarm made him jump, not the gentle chime of his communication system, but the harsh, pulsing wail of the planetary alert network. A sound not heard since the resource wars ended 15 years ago. Abe burst through the door. "Sir, you need to see this." The main screen switched to a live feed from Neptune's orbital monitoring station. Park's breath caught in his throat. Against the blue backdrop of Neptune hung an object that clearly didn't belong. It was massive, at least 20 kilometers long, and shaped like a spearhead. Its surface gleamed with an unnatural metallic sheen that reflected Neptune's azure glow. "When did it appear?" Park asked. "Just now, sir. No warning. No approach detected. It simply materialized." Park's mind raced. First contact. After all the speculation, all the searching, they had come to us. Have they communicated? Not yet, but... The screen flickered. The image of the alien vessel disappeared, replaced by a symbol Park didn't recognize. A spiral with 3 branches, each ending in a star-like point. Then came the voice. It spoke Korean. Perfect, unaccented Korean. Startling Park. Reports quickly confirmed it was speaking simultaneously in every human language, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention inhabitants of Sol 3. This is Grand Admiral Tekla of the Galactic Imperial Fleet. Your world has been designated as Resource Territory R-7294. You will surrender all planetary governance to Imperial authority within 30 standard days. Resistance will result in standard pacification procedures." The message repeated 3 times before the screen returned to the image of the vessel. Park sat frozen, the words echoing in his mind. Not a greeting. Not an invitation to join some galactic community. A demand for surrender. "Get me General Kim," he ordered, "and contact every member of the Security Council. Now." Within 3 hours, Park stood in the secure chamber beneath Seoul. The UEC Security Council, 12 men and women representing Earth's unified government, sat around the circular table. On the wall screens, the alien ship still hovered near Neptune. It hadn't moved. "We've received no further communication," reported the intelligence director. "Our attempts to establish dialogue have been ignored." "What are our options?" Park asked. General Kim Ju-woo, head of Earth's Defense Forces, stepped forward. She was a compact woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much during the resource wars. "Conventional military response would be futile," she said bluntly. "Based on the size of that vessel and its ability to appear without detection, we're dealing with technology far beyond our public capabilities." Park noted her careful wording. Public capabilities. The room grew quiet. General Kim looked to the others for confirmation. After a series of nods, she pressed her palm to the table's security scanner. Authorization. Kim Ju-woo, General, Earth Defense Forces. Phantom Protocol disclosure. The center of the table glowed, and a new holographic display appeared. It showed not 1 ship but 17. Unlike the bulky transports and orbital platforms that made up Earth's known fleet, these vessels were sleek, predatory. Their hulls were midnight black with subtle blue highlights along sharp edges. They looked dangerous. "What am I looking at, General?" Park asked, though he suspected the answer. "The Phantom Fleet, Mr. Secretary. For the past 30 years, we've been developing ships based on technology recovered from an alien scout craft that crashed in the Kuiper Belt in 2126. Park looked around the table. And none of you thought to inform me of this. Need to know basis, Mr. Secretary, said the defense minister. Only active threat scenarios trigger disclosure. I'd say this qualifies, Park muttered, studying the ships. Tell me about them. General Kim manipulated the display, zooming in on one vessel. The technology we recovered allowed us to develop two key innovations. First, a propulsion system that doesn't just move through space, but partially shifts the vessel into another phase of reality. This makes them essentially invisible to conventional detection methods. And second, weapons. Kim's face was grim. Gravitational manipulation devices that can tear apart matter at the atomic level. We've also adapted the phase technology for defensive purposes. Are they combat ready? Yes. We've maintained them in a state of operational readiness at a hidden base beneath Callisto. The crews train in rotation. They can deploy within 12 hours. Park walked around the table, studying the ships from different angles. 17 ships against whatever fleet that Grand Admiral commands. Quality over quantity, Mr. Secretary, Kim said with a tight smile. They don't know what we're capable of. She touched the display again, and the hologram showed the ships in formation, sleek and deadly. And they're about to find out. Park nodded slowly. Prepare them for deployment, General, but keep them hidden for now. He turned to the council. Meanwhile, we'll need to stall. Send a message to this Admiral Tekla. Tell them we need time to prepare our world for this transition. Request a meeting to discuss terms. And if they refuse, asked one counselor. Park's eyes returned to the Phantom Fleet, humanity's secret guardians, waiting in the darkness of Jupiter's shadow. Then we show them that humanity doesn't surrender, not to anyone. As the council dispersed to their tasks, Park remained, watching the alien ship on the screen. In 30 days, the future of Earth would be decided. He hoped the gamble they were about to make, the revelation of humanity's hidden strength, would be enough to secure that future. The Phantom Fleet was humanity's last, best hope, and soon, the Galactic Empire would learn just how dangerous cornered humans could be. Admiral Lee Hunke stood at the viewport of Callisto Base, watching as technicians prepared the Phantom Fleet for departure. The 17 ships rested in their massive underground hangar, bathed in blue light. Each vessel was a miracle of engineering, sleek, black, and deadly. At 62, Lee had thought his fighting days were over. The resource wars had taken enough from him. His youth, his left eye, now replaced with a cybernetic implant, and far too many friends. Yet here he was, called back to lead humanity's defense against an enemy that made the resource wars look like a schoolyard scuffle. Admiral, a voice called from behind him. The captains have assembled. Lee turned to see his aide, Lieutenant G. Thank you. I'll be right there. The war room was silent as Lee entered. 17 men and women stood around the central holotable. The captains of the Phantom Fleet. Some were veterans like himself, with gray in their hair and old scars visible. Others were younger, products of the academy he had helped establish after the wars. Ladies and gentlemen, Lee began. 24 hours ago, an alien vessel appeared near Neptune and demanded Earth's surrender. Intelligence now reports that additional ships have begun arriving through what appears to be some kind of faster-than-light jump point. He activated the holotable, showing the alien vessels clustering near Neptune. The Galactic Empire, as they call themselves, has given us 30 days to surrender. Secretary General Park is stalling for time, but we must assume hostilities will commence when that deadline expires, or sooner. Captain Kang Minji stepped forward. At 43, she was one of his most trusted officers and commander of the fleet's flagship, the Dauntless. What are our orders, Admiral? Lee touched the controls, and the display shifted to show the solar system. First, we need information. The Dauntless will take a small reconnaissance force to observe the Imperial fleet without engaging. I want to know their capabilities, their numbers, and their weaknesses. He looked around the room. The rest of you will prepare for full deployment. This is what the Phantom Fleet was built for. This is why we've trained in secret for decades. Sir, said Captain Yoon, a younger officer commanding the Spectre, how are we to engage a force that likely has centuries of advancement on us? With our advantages, Lee replied, expanding the hologram to show the technical specifications of their ships. The Phantom Fleet represents everything we've learned since the Kuiper Belt discovery. Our ships can phase shift between reality states, making us effectively invisible to standard detection systems. He demonstrated by switching the display to show a phantom vessel shifting out of normal space, its outline becoming transparent and ghostly. When phase shifted, we exist partly in another dimension. We can observe the enemy, position ourselves, and then shift back to normal space, only when ready to strike. Captain Kang studied the tactical display showing estimates of the Imperial fleet strength. Their fleet vastly outnumbers ours. Admiral, even with phase shifting, we're talking about 17 ships against potentially hundreds or thousands. Numbers won't matter if they can't see us, Lee replied with confidence he partly felt. Our gravitational lenses can disrupt matter at the atomic level. One direct hit can cripple their largest vessels. He zoomed in on the weapon systems. The lenses create localized gravitational distortions that tear apart molecular bonds. No known shielding can stop them because they don't attack the shields. They attack the fabric of space itself. Lee switched the display again, showing the inner planets. Earth's diplomats have requested an extension of the ultimatum. This gives us time to position ourselves. Captain Kang will lead the reconnaissance mission, departing in 6 hours. The rest of the fleet will follow in stages, establishing a defensive perimeter around Earth while staying phase-shifted. And then? Asked Captain Song, an older woman who had served with Lee during the resource wars. And then we wait for them to make a mistake, Lee said grimly, or for the diplomats to fail. 6 hours later, Lee stood in the Dauntless's command center as the ship prepared to leave Callisto Base. The massive doors above them parted, revealing Jupiter's swirling clouds. The gas giant would help mask their departure, though with phase-shifting technology, they were already invisible to conventional sensors. Phase drives charging, reported the engineering officer. Ready in 30 seconds. Captain Kang took her position beside Lee. Do you think they'll negotiate, sir? Lee shook his head. They wouldn't have opened with a demand for surrender if they were interested in talking. They expect us to be primitive and frightened. They expect us to give up. 5 seconds to phase shift, called the helmsman. They don't know humans very well, do they? Kang said with a small smile. No, Lee agreed as the ship began to shimmer, reality itself seeming to bend around them. But they're about to learn. The Dauntless and 2 escort ships vanished from normal space, leaving only the faintest distortion in their wake. As they accelerated toward Neptune, Lee watched Jupiter's moons drop away behind them. Somewhere out there, an alien armada was gathering, preparing to claim Earth as just another conquest. 3 days later, the Dauntless hung in space near Triton, Neptune's largest moon. In their phase-shifted state, they were meters away from an Imperial scout ship, completely undetected. Their technology is impressive, Captain Kang admitted, studying the sensor readings. But their tactics are surprisingly predictable. They're methodically mapping our system, establishing patrol routes. Lee watched as more Imperial ships emerged from what their sensors now confirmed was a stable wormhole near Neptune. They're very confident. Look how they're spreading out, not bothering with defensive formations. Because they don't expect resistance, Kang said. Their database mentions hundreds of conquered worlds. This is routine for them. Send the data back to the fleet, Lee ordered. It's time for Phase 2. As the Dauntless continued its silent observation, the rest of the Phantom Fleet slipped away from Callisto Base. One by one, the black ships disappeared into their partial dimensional shift, becoming ghosts haunting the space between worlds. 3 Imperial scout ships approached Mars, scanning the human colony there. They didn't detect the Phantom vessel Wraith hovering directly in their path, watching, learning, preparing. Similar scenes played out across the solar system as humanity's secret defenders took up their positions. On Earth, diplomats spoke of cooperation and requested more time to prepare their people for integration into the Galactic Empire. The Imperial representatives, now shuttled down to Earth, were dismissive but agreed to a small extension. They had no idea that with each passing hour, the noose of humanity's counterattack was tightening around them. The hunters, so certain of their prey's helplessness, had no idea they were being hunted in return. Admiral Lee Hunke watched the Imperial fleet growing daily and felt a calm certainty. The Phantom Fleet was humanity's best hope, perhaps its only hope. And when the time came to strike, the Empire would learn that Earth did not surrender. It fought back. 3 days before the Imperial deadline, the Phantom Fleet gathered at the pre-arranged coordinates. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, studying the tactical display. The 17 ships of humanity's secret fleet were arranged in attack formation, though to any outside observer, nothing would be visible. They remained phase-shifted, existing partly in another dimension. Before them, spreading across space like a metal forest, floated the Imperial Armada. Over the past weeks, more ships had arrived through the wormhole near Neptune. Now hundreds of vessels formed a blockade between Earth and the outer planets. The Imperial force was impressive, massive dreadnoughts flanked by smaller cruisers and swarms of fighter craft. "Final systems check," Lee ordered. "Status report from all ships." Captain Kang nodded to her communications officer who relayed the command. One by one, the captains of the Phantom Fleet reported in. All systems were operational. All weapons were charged. All crews were ready. "Sir," said Kang, "the gravitational lances are at full power. Phase drives are functioning at optimal levels." Lee nodded, his cybernetic eye scanning the tactical data streaming across his vision. 27 days ago, aliens had appeared in their system and demanded Earth's surrender. Today, humanity would give its answer. "Send the coded signal to Earth Command," Lee said. "Operation Shadow Strike is commencing." On the main view screen, he could see an Imperial shuttle returning from Earth. The diplomatic talks had been a carefully orchestrated diversion, keeping the alien commander occupied while the Phantom Fleet moved into position. "All ships, prepare to phase shift on my mark," Lee announced across the fleet channel. "Target designations have been transmitted. Primary targets are their command vessels and largest dreadnoughts." He took a deep breath. If their intelligence was wrong, if the aliens had some way to detect phase-shifted vessels, the Phantom Fleet would be destroyed in minutes. Everything depended on the element of surprise. "Admiral," Captain Kang said quietly, "it's been an honor serving with you." Lee nodded. "The honor has been mine, Captain." He raised his voice. "All ships, mark." Throughout the Imperial formation, space itself seemed to ripple and tear. Where there had been nothing, 17 black ships suddenly appeared, like ghosts taking solid form. The Dauntless materialized directly alongside the largest Imperial vessel, a dreadnought nearly 5 times its size. "All ships, weapons free," Lee commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through him. "Show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The Dauntless's gravitational lance powered up, glowing with blue energy that distorted the space around it. The beam struck the Imperial dreadnought amidships. There was no explosion, no fire, just a perfect circular hole where the beam had passed through. Around the hole, the alien ship's hull began to crumble as molecular bonds failed, and matter itself came apart. Across the formation, the scene repeated. Human vessels appeared from nowhere, fired their exotic weapons, and vanished again before the Imperial ships could target them. 2 massive dreadnoughts were reduced to expanding clouds of particles. A command carrier split in half as a gravitational lance severed its spine. "Phase shift and reposition," Lee ordered as the Dauntless disappeared again, moments before Imperial energy weapons fired at their previous location. The bridge crew worked with practiced precision. They had trained for this moment for years, running endless simulations. Now those simulations had become reality. New target locked. announced the weapons officer, ready to phase in. Execute, Lee commanded. The Dauntless shifted back into normal space behind an Imperial cruiser. The gravitational lance fired again, this time slicing through the cruiser's engine section. The alien ship spun out of control, leaking atmosphere and debris. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "the Imperials are trying to coordinate a response. They're flooding all frequencies with orders and distress calls." "Phase out," Lee ordered, and the Dauntless vanished again. "Let's listen to what they're saying." The Imperial communications were frantic. Ships reported being attacked by enemies that appeared and disappeared. Officers demanded reinforcements or new orders. Through it all cut the voice of the Imperial commander, trying to restore order. Defensive sphere formation. All ships maintain fire in all directions. The Imperial fleet began to contract, forming a protective ball with their largest remaining ships at the center. It was a logical response to an enemy that could strike from any angle. "Perfect," Lee said. "They're clustering together. All ships, target coordinates transmitted. Prepare for simultaneous strike." The 17 ships of the Phantom Fleet positioned themselves around the Imperial sphere. At Lee's command, they all phase-shifted into reality at once and fired their gravitational lances at precisely calculated points in the enemy formation. The effect was devastating. Ships torn apart from within created a chain reaction as debris slammed into neighboring vessels. Power cores overloaded. Fuel stores ignited. What had been an orderly defensive formation became chaos. "Phase out and reposition," Lee ordered again. The hit-and-run tactics were working. The Imperial fleet, despite its overwhelming numbers, couldn't fight what it couldn't see. "Admiral," the communications officer called, "the Imperial commander is broadcasting on all frequencies. I think it's meant for us." "Put it through," Lee said. A harsh alien voice filled the bridge. Though the words were in perfect Korean, the tone held unmistakable rage and confusion. "Unknown human vessels. How is this possible? Your species lacks phase technology. Your world is pre-spacefaring by all Imperial records." Lee gestured for a channel to be opened. His response would be broadcast not just to the Imperial fleet but throughout the system. Earth needed to hear it. The colonies on Mars and Europa needed to hear it. And most importantly, the enemy needed to hear it. "This is Admiral Lee Hunke of the Earth Defense Force. You should have studied us better. Humans don't surrender. We innovate, we adapt, and we overcome. You came to our home and demanded our submission. This is our answer." He cut the transmission and turned to Captain Kang. "Prepare for the next attack run. Target their flagship. Let's make sure the Imperial commander gets our message personally." As the Dauntless shifted out of normal space, Lee watched the tactical display update. The Imperial fleet was in disarray. Ships fired wildly at empty space. Some were attempting to retreat toward the wormhole. Others had formed smaller defensive clusters. For the first time since the alien vessel appeared near Neptune, Admiral Lee allowed himself to feel hope. The Phantom Fleet couldn't defeat the entire Imperial Armada. There were simply too many enemy ships. But they didn't need to win a conventional battle. They just needed to show the Empire that conquering Earth would cost too much. "All ships," he transmitted to the fleet, "continue attack pattern Delta. Remember your training. Hit and fade. Don't stay in normal space for more than 30 seconds at a time." As the battle continued, the 17 ships of the Phantom Fleet danced through the Imperial formation like shadows, striking and vanishing, leaving destruction in their wake. And with each successful attack, the message to the Galactic Empire became clearer. Earth would not be taken easily. Earth would not surrender. Earth would fight. The Imperial response came 2 days after Operation Shadow Strike. The wormhole near Neptune flared with energy as ship after ship poured through. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. Admiral Lee watched from the Dauntless's bridge, his face grim. The tactical display showed the incoming vessels, a vast armada that dwarfed the force they had initially faced. "They're calling in their main battle fleet," Captain Kang said, her voice tight. "This isn't a colonial force anymore." The Imperial ships spread out in attack formation, their weapons systems charged, glowing points of light against the blackness of space. The message was clear. The Empire would not tolerate resistance. "All ships, defensive positions," Lee ordered. "Maintain phase shift and prepare for coordinated strikes." The 17 vessels of the Phantom Fleet took up positions around Earth and its colonies. They were humanity's last line of defense, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. On Mars, the colonial governor watched with growing horror as hundreds of Imperial ships descended toward the thin atmosphere. The colony's defenses, a few orbital guns and surface-to-space missiles, would be useless against such a force. "Evacuation order issued," he announced to his staff. "Get everyone to the underground shelters." But it was too late. The Imperial vessels opened fire, energy beams slicing through the Martian sky. Research stations exploded. The main dome cracked, atmosphere venting into space. Thousands of colonists died in minutes. The phantom ship Spectre appeared above the colony, its gravitational lance cutting through 3 Imperial attackers. Captain Yoon's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "Mars colony, we're attempting to draw their fire. Direct survivors to the emergency bunkers in Sector 9. But the Spectre was just one ship against hundreds. It phased out just as enemy fire converged on its position, only to reappear elsewhere to strike again. A desperate dance that couldn't be maintained forever. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. The Jupiter mining stations fell silent. The research outpost on Europa went dark. The Empire was systematically destroying humanity's presence beyond Earth. In the underground command center beneath Seoul, Secretary General Park received the grim reports. Mars colony devastated. Europa station destroyed. The outer system outposts gone. Now thousands of Imperial ships were heading toward Earth itself. "How long until they're in bombardment range?" Park asked. 20 minutes, General Kim replied. "The Phantom Fleet is engaging them, but there are too many targets." Park nodded. They had hoped the initial strike would convince the Empire to reconsider. Instead, it had provoked an overwhelming response. Now it was time for Earth's final surprise. "Activate the shield network," he ordered. "And contact Admiral Lee. Tell him to proceed with Operation Last Resort." Aboard the Dauntless, Lee received the message. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but they had prepared for this scenario. The Phantom Fleet could not defeat the Imperial Armada in direct combat. Their only hope was to cut off the head, eliminate the Imperial command structure. "Captain Kang, prepare boarding teams," Lee ordered. "The Dauntless, the Shadow, and the Ghost will target the Imperial flagship." Kang nodded. "Yes, Admiral. Teams are standing by." Lee addressed the crew through the ship's communication system. "This is the Admiral. We are initiating Operation Last Resort. Our target is the Imperial command vessel. We will use our phase technology to materialize inside their ship and capture their command center. The mission objective is to secure their communication systems and central database. This may be our last chance to save Earth." Throughout the ship, men and women prepared for battle. They donned combat armor and checked their weapons. Compact pulse rifles and gravitational pistols, smaller versions of the technology that powered their ship's main weapons. "Phase drives at maximum," reported the engineering officer. "We can maintain internal phase integrity for approximately 40 minutes once inside the enemy vessel." "That will have to be enough," Lee said. "Shadow, Ghost, confirm readiness." The captains of the 2 support ships acknowledged. The 3 vessels moved into formation, accelerating toward the massive Imperial flagship at the center of the attacking fleet. As they approached, the first Imperial ships reached Earth orbit. They opened fire, energy weapons blazing down toward the planet's surface. Cities would be vaporized. Continents would burn. Billions would die. But the attack never reached the ground. Seconds before impact, Earth's orbital platforms activated. Energy fields shimmered into existence, overlapping to form a protective bubble around the planet. The Imperial weapons fire splashed against the shields, dissipating in spectacular flares of light. Another secret revealed, Lee murmured. Earth had developed shield technology based on the same principles as their phase drives. It couldn't hold forever against such an assault, but it would buy them time. Ready to phase inside their perimeter, announced the helmsman. Coordinates locked on their main hangar bay. Execute, Lee commanded. The three human ships disappeared, slipping through reality itself. They reappeared moments later inside the cavernous hangar of the Imperial flagship, their sudden materialization crushing several smaller craft. Alarms blared as atmosphere vented from ruptured hull sections. Seal the hangar, Lee ordered. Boarding teams, move out. Armored soldiers poured from the three ships, engaging the surprised Imperial security forces. The aliens were tall, with scaled skin and 4 arms, each holding a weapon. But they had never faced an enemy inside their own ship before. The shock gave the humans a critical advantage. This way, Lee directed, following the ship schematics they had gleaned from previous encounters. Their command center should be 3 levels up. Captain Kang moved beside him, pulse rifle at the ready. We need to secure their database first. It's likely in a separate location from the bridge. Lee nodded. Take your team and find it. We'll secure the command center. The human forces split, fighting their way through the alien vessel. The corridors were vast, designed for beings larger than humans. Strange symbols marked the walls, and the air carried an acrid scent that made breathing difficult. Imperial soldiers rallied, setting up defensive positions at key junctions. The fighting was intense, with casualties on both sides. But the humans pressed forward, driven by the knowledge that Earth's survival hung in the balance. Captain Kang and her team reached a heavily guarded section of the ship. The doors were sealed, with security systems unlike any they had encountered before. This has to be it, she said. Set the breaching charges. The explosion tore through the doors. Inside was a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures pulsing with light. The Imperial database. Kang's team secured the room, eliminating the remaining guards. Begin the data transfer, she ordered, connecting their devices to the alien technology. Download everything. Meanwhile, Admiral Lee fought his way to the command center. The Imperial resistance grew fiercer as they approached. These aliens would not surrender their ship easily. Admiral, our phase integrity is failing, warned his aide. 20 minutes remaining before we have to withdraw. Push forward, Lee ordered. We need that command center. With a final assault, they breached the bridge. The Imperial commander, larger than the others, with ceremonial armor and a crest of spines, stood surrounded by officers. It barked orders in an alien language, but the ship's translator rendered them in Korean. Kill them all. Destroy their world. Lee raised his gravitational pistol. Surrender your vessel or die. The battle was brief but violent. When it ended, the Imperial commander lay dead, and the command center was in human hands. Secure communications, Lee ordered, and find out what's happening outside. The tactical display showed the battle raging around Earth. The shields were holding, but weakening under the constant bombardment. The Phantom Fleet continued to strike where they could, but they were losing ships. The Ghost had not made it out of the hangar bay, destroyed by Imperial security forces. Admiral, Captain Kane's voice came through his communicator. You need to see this. They didn't come for resources. Lee left the command center in the hands of his officers and made his way to the database chamber. Kang met him at the entrance, her face pale. I found their mission parameters, she said, leading him to a console. They targeted us because human DNA contains a protein sequence that makes us immune to a plague devastating their empire. Lee stared at the data scrolling across the screen. A disease was spreading through Imperial territories, killing billions. Human genetic material contained the key to a cure, a protein sequence that provided natural immunity. They'd rather wipe us out than ask for help, Lee said grimly. Typical Empire thinking. Kang nodded. They feared that if we knew about the plague, we would use it as leverage, or worse, find a way to weaponize it against them. Lee looked at the tactical display. Earth's shields were failing. More Imperial ships arrived every minute. Even with control of their flagship, humanity was losing the battle. Download all the data on this plague, he ordered, and prepare a message for broadcast to every Imperial ship. It's time we showed them another human trait, one they clearly don't understand. What's that, Admiral? Kang asked. Compassion, Lee replied. Sometimes it's the most powerful weapon of all. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the captured Imperial flagship. Around him, human technicians worked quickly to understand the alien systems. Earth's shields were failing. The Imperial fleet continued its relentless bombardment. Time was running out. The communication systems are under our control, Captain Kang reported. We can broadcast on all Imperial frequencies. Lee nodded. And the encryption data? We have it. We can bypass their sensors, reach every ship and colony in their territory. Lee looked at the tactical display. The Phantom fleet was down to 11 ships. Mars colony was in ruins. The Europa base was gone. But they now had something more powerful than weapons. They had the truth. Prepare the broadcast, Lee ordered. Include all the data about the plague and our genetic immunity. Show them what their leaders were willing to do rather than ask for help. The communications officer prepared the system. Within minutes, they were ready. Lee stepped before the alien recording device. He straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. Attention all sentient beings under Imperial rule. I am Admiral Lee Hunky of Earth. The Empire has hidden the truth from you. A plague is spreading through Imperial territories, and instead of seeking peaceful solutions, they've chosen genocide against species who might help. Today, we stand together against tyranny. The message continued, detailing the Empire's plan to destroy Earth rather than reveal their weakness. Lee explained how human DNA contained the key to fighting the plague, a cure that could save billions of lives across the galaxy. We offer this knowledge freely, he concluded, not as conquerors, but as equals. The Empire tried to destroy us. We choose instead to help save you. The broadcast went out, carried by the Imperial ship's powerful transmitters. It reached the attacking fleet first. Ship by ship, the bombardment of Earth slowed, then stopped, as the information spread among the alien crews. Then the message traveled outward, through the network of wormholes that connected the Empire's vast territory. It reached colony worlds, military bases, and subject planets across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The response was faster than anyone had expected. On the Imperial homeworld, crowds gathered in the central squares. The plague had already claimed millions of lives there. Citizens demanded answers from their rulers. When soldiers refused to fire on the protesters, the Imperial Council fled. Throughout the fleet surrounding Earth, ships began to stand down. Some captains maintained their loyalty to the Empire, ordering their crews to continue the attack. They found themselves facing mutinies as their own soldiers turned against them. Admiral, called the communications officer, we're receiving responses from throughout the Imperial territory. Colonies are declaring independence. Military units are refusing orders. It's complete chaos out there. Lee watched as the tactical display updated. The Imperial fleet had fractured. Ships were moving away from Earth, some fleeing back through the wormhole, others simply holding position, awaiting new orders that would never come. The Empire was already weak, Kang observed. The plague had undermined their control. They were desperate. And now they're finished, Lee said. At least in their current form. 6 months passed. Earth had begun to rebuild. The Mars colony was slowly recovering. New outposts were under construction to replace those lost in the attack. But the biggest changes had happened beyond the solar system. The Imperial territory had fragmented into dozens of independent regions. Some remained loyal to the old government, but most had broken away, forming new alliances or reclaiming long-lost independence. Earth ships, no longer hidden, traveled openly through the galaxy. They carried medical teams and the treatments developed from human genetic material, freely given to fight the plague that had pushed the Empire to such desperate measures. Admiral Lee stood on the observation deck of the Dauntless, now repaired and refitted. The Earth below was partly hidden by a massive space station under construction, a joint project involving humans and 7 alien species. Captain Kang joined him at the viewport. The representatives have arrived. 27 species in all. They're gathering in the main conference chamber. Lee nodded. I never imagined we'd see something like this. Not in my lifetime. They watched as alien ships docked with the station. Each was different, some sleek and elegant, others bulky and functional. The vessels represented worlds that until recently had been under Imperial control. Now they came as equals to sign the founding charter of the Galactic Cooperative. We should join them, Kang said. They're waiting for you specifically, the hero who broke the Empire. Lee shook his head. I'm no hero. I did what was necessary. We all did. They made their way to the conference chamber. Beings of all shapes and sizes filled the room. Some breathed different air mixtures, contained in special suits. Others moved on different numbers of limbs or floated above the ground. But all turned respectfully as Lee and Kang entered. The signing ceremony was brief but meaningful. Each representative added their mark to the charter, a document that established mutual defense, free trade, and respect for sovereignty among all member worlds. When it was done, the chamber erupted in sounds of approval, different for each species, but unmistakable in meaning. Joy, hope, relief. Later, as the alien ships prepared to depart, Lee and Kang returned to the observation deck of the Dauntless. We did more than save ourselves, Kang said, watching the vessels move away from Earth, carrying the news of the Alliance to their homeworlds. We changed the galaxy. Lee nodded, not with our weapons, but with what makes us human, our stubborn refusal to bow to tyranny, and our even more stubborn insistence on helping others, even former enemies. The ships accelerated, disappearing into the distance. Some would establish permanent embassies on Earth. Others would return with trade goods and cultural exchanges. The isolation humanity had known was over forever. What's next for us? Kang asked. Lee smiled. The Phantom Fleet has a new mission, exploration, not war. There's a whole galaxy out there, and most of it isn't on any Imperial map. The Dauntless's engines hummed to life. Beyond Earth's orbit, the remaining ships of the Phantom Fleet formed up, their black hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They had been built for war, but would now serve peace. As they moved away from Earth, Lee thought about how close they had come to extinction. One moment, one decision had changed everything. The Empire had chosen destruction. Humanity had chosen compassion. And that had made all the difference. The end